Hello Internet, this is Daniel with Driving and Dragons. Today I'm coming to you guys with my very first game review for Colonies and Conquerors. Now, it's been a little while since I've done a review of anything. I used to do reviews for mixed martial arts events back in the day when my wife and I ran a mixed martial arts website, and I would always do the good, the bad, and the ugly because it was kind of my firm opinion that a fighter couldn't step into the cage and come out the same as he went in. He either improves his station, falls back a bit, or really has a disaster. I don't think that's particularly fair for a tabletop role-playing game because there's going to be some things that are just simply serviceable that are maybe bad for me but not poorly done, so they're going to work well for others. And there's going to be other things that really are just a matter of flavor or taste in the way they're designed. It doesn't really matter one way or another. It's just, once again, it's going to simply come down to what the person looking at purchasing the game is going to have. So instead of going with the good, the bad, the ugly, we're going to take a look at this and we're going to talk about what's good, what's neutral, and what's evil about Colonies and Conquerors. See you guys on the other side. So to start off with, here's a quick disclaimer. Anakin over at Spirit Bear Studios is the one who gave me a copy of this game in exchange for a fair and honest review. Putting that out there that I was given a copy for the purpose of a review. This is also a first look review. I have not had an opportunity to get a good solid playthrough with an independent group. So what I'm looking at here is what I can pull from the rules, what I can see from live stream games that he's put forward, and just my overall opinions on some of the content itself, as well as a little bit of a review that you could call more of a critique, which is just the overall quality of the PDF itself and where I think some polish could be added. So with that disclaimer out of the way, we'll get things rolling forward. There will be links below for Spirit Bear Studios where you can buy the PDF yourself so that you can try it out on your own and form your own opinions. I'd love to see what you say about it in the comments section below, and I would also love to hear anybody who has had a chance to play Colonies and Conquerors put their thoughts below. Let's go ahead and move forward and talk about a quick first glance review of Colonies and Conquerors. So I'm going to try and do a short form review, just a first glance overview of what I like, what I think is kind of in the neutral side of things, and what I don't like about Colonies and Conquerors. And then I'll do a few more videos going forward to do a little bit more detail as far as how combat works, what classes there are, and that sort of thing. So in the good of Colonies and Conquerors. Colonies and Conquerors is a D20 system game that is based largely in the very late Renaissance up to about the American Civil War. So you're looking at 1600 to about 1850, give or take. It is based in the real world and is designed largely around North America. And some of the things that I really love about it, it is, as a rule system, it is a solid system. It has a few tweaks in it that I appreciate for, from the standard D20 system. You do see a lot of D&D influence in it, and it doesn't really shy away from some of the historicity that others would. They made some good choices about choosing their battles. Did they go in and make racial differences between different types of human from around the world? No. They dodged that landmine and stepped right around it. Not worth fighting over. Not worth getting into the online dumpster fire. But what they did do is they didn't shy away from things like saying, hey, when I look through my Tall Tailor's Guide and it tells me about settlements and stuff, I'm not finding guns and plate armor and stuff like this in the Native American villages because they didn't have that technology, and it doesn't shy away from the ahistorical revisionist idea of trying to make everybody equal at all times and all ways. It goes back and says, hey, look, sometimes it sucked. Sometimes if you were a black person or any person of African descent who is in the New World in the 1600s, chances are you got here because somebody owned somebody else, and that's how you made it here. Yes, there were free blacks, but they were very, very much in the minority, and they generally came here as a result of what they referred to as that peculiar institution. And they don't shy away from it, which is great. So you've got a very unique flavor here. The combat system has been adjusted from the standard D20. It's not using a static armor class. It uses opposed rolls. And while the game is a very high-powered game, it has a combat system that really lends itself to epic moments, because you can have a double critical where a defender rolls a critical miss and the attacker rolls a critical hit and does 4 times damage. Or if he's using a weapon that has had some modifications done by the inventor or one of the other tech classes, you could potentially have him doing 6 to 8 times damage on a critical hit, which can totally swing a battle and really lends itself to a realism in the combat, where big epic hits, 1 or 2 of them is what changes the entire thing. Most fights aren't these duels that you see in Dungeons and Dragons where people hit each other 14 and 15 times and they're still standing there. A lot of them, it comes down to who scores the first hit, the first real hit. So that's a great thing. It is a balanced game, and when I say it's balanced, I mean it's balanced in the right way. The classes are balanced as a group against the world. They are not balanced necessarily for everybody to be able to run out and solo the game, which is not the way to balance a TTRPG. They are balanced to be part of a unit, which is fantastic. That leads to another of the great things about Colonies and Conquerors, is that this game has a fantastic unit combat system. It has great rules for people working together in small units like you would see in small frontier skirmishes, Napoleonic war battles, and that sort of thing. And it does a very good job with it, so you can have that added into your adventure, into your flavor. And it does a good job with it. It also has a fairly solid magic system that I like. It's a lot more flexible than what's been out there before. It uses a magic point system, but not only do you not just have the standard sleep to recover or take a potion to recover mechanics, you've got a few different ways to get them back, and even a system to where certain more spiritual magic classes can draw magic points off the rest of the party. So, for instance, you might have your fighter who actually has some of these magic points and whatnot and can't use them for himself, but his wizard or witch or shaman or whatever can draw off of that power and turn around and use it, which I find to be pretty fantastic. So those are some of the really good points about this game. I think that it's got a very solid base, a very solid set of core rules. It's very good in terms of how quick you can pick it up and play. And all of that kind of culminates in something that more games need to have. It has multiple different ways to start your character. You can pick a template, which is literally just somebody who a pre-generated character in any class. Or you can start the pre-generated set of stats and then build your character off of those. Or you can roll your actual character all the way up from the ground up. And it has all three nice and neat and laid out for you. So whether you're a new player who just wants to focus on learning the rules in kind of a modular way by saying, I'm going to take this template and I'm just going to play the game. I'll worry about rolling a character later. Right now I want to learn the basics of how things work. I want to jump right into it. Or you're an experienced player who's like, you know what? It's Saturday. It's raining. We were going to grill out, but we're all here and we got to stay inside anyway because it's storming outside. You know what? Let's play Colonies and Conquerors, but we ain't got time to roll up characters. Just grab one of these pre-gens. All the way up to making your customized character. And then in your Tall Tailor's Guide, what do you have? Tons of charts on how to start an adventure. You can roll to figure out different ideas about starting starting an adventure. You've got a pre-generated adventure in the back. You've got nice, neat charts and tables that tell you the detailed how to create an enemy or a monster that is the same, that is the challenge rating you need. They did an excellent job with the difficulty rating system as well. It's very well explained, very well detailed. You can tell that somebody looked at the challenge rating system in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, realized it was steaming hot garbage, that it was half thought out, and that they didn't explain and said, I'm not going to do that, and went the opposite direction. They give you plenty on difficulty rating in that Tall Tailor's Guide. So that pretty much sums it up for all the good there. On the more neutral system side of things, this is going to be mainly things that either I feel are not for me, but might be for somebody else. I see the merit in them. I see where they come from, but I think they're kind of take it or leave it type things, or things that are on the right track and need a tweak. This is going to be things like the reputation system. I kind of like the idea of a reputation system. I don't think an alignment system really works in this particular game, because it deals with the culture clash of multiple different factions and multiple different cultures that developed independently over years. It deals with the people brought in by slavery, who were seen by most of the rest of the races there as subhuman, or who are totally foreign. It has to do with the almost alien invader of the Europeans coming over, who have this high technology and these high-minded ideals and certain strong religious views, versus your Native American tribes, which are all independent in and of themselves and have their own independent views. You have all these factions that are allies and enemies with each other, that are competing in different ways. And good doesn't matter so much as which side you're on. So, for instance, I can be the best person in the world, but if I'm a British commander, I'm getting scalped if I go into the Native American village because I just wiped out half their tribe. Doesn't matter if I'm good, doesn't matter if I'm evil. Same thing goes. I develop these reputations. I can be the greatest Native American warrior on the planet. But if I walk into Jamestown, they're probably going to hang me because I've got a few scalps on my belt that they don't like. And so you build this reputation, and that reputation has to do with a lot of things in game, where, it has to do with availability of things you can buy and purchase and that sort of thing, which makes sense because you're going to have limited resources in the new world. And even if I've got this stuff, I'm not going to sell it to you unless I know you're going to be good for my group and my faction, regardless of how much money you have. And the dump stats have been kind of taken away. They've been taken away because the game designer has gone back and given reasons why you need everything. It's like, you want to have a dump stat for your reputation? Well, congratulations, you're going to start off with less silver dollars, less money than everybody else. There's, once again, your fighter may not need magic, but he needs those mental skills because his casters are better equipped when he has mental points that they can take away from him and use to power their spells and whatnot. So there's reasons for everything. Now, this also leads to kind of a situation where you can start doing some unforeseen stacking to try and break the game. When you have a reputation system like that, you can manipulate that reputation to try and drive up and very quickly gain access to more powerful things from one specific group. And there's just a few different ways that can kind of be manipulated. So that's kind of why it falls into the neutral category. Another thing that kind of falls into the neutral category for me is the realism on some things is a little off. Like, for instance, you look at, and you can say it's for game balance reasons, so it just kind of comes back to how you want to balance the game. Firearms don't do anywhere near enough damage, and they're way too fast to reload. I'm just going to say that right out front. A musket with a skilled musketeer is something that takes 30 seconds to reload. in that time period. 30 seconds. That's 5 turns, half of a full round. I can shoot my musket, reload it, and move all in 6 seconds in this game. And for that, I get the same similar kind of damage that I get to like a longbow. Honestly, I would like to see firearms do substantially more damage, maybe have special effects based on what they are, such as muskets and rifles and things of that nature, maybe penetrating armor and ignoring certain kinds of armor and ignoring damage reduction, maybe having only certain kinds of armor that give you a bonus at all against firearms, and then maybe having like the blunderbuss have a spread effect and whatnot, but then adjusting those reload times to make sense. And now you have to flesh those things out a bit. And it also gives your melee characters time to close distance and that sort of thing, when the musketeer can't shoot his rifle and reload it while he's running back to get behind cover again. It's no, he shot, he's going to have to run back behind cover, and he better be way ahead of you. Few other neutral things. Personally, I think some of it's a little preachy. That may just be me. But as somebody who's kind of a history buff himself, who knows about the period and whatnot, when I open up the book and it's like, maybe you can educate yourself on this, it's kind of preachy language. In some cases, where it kind of says, hey, you should learn these things. You're going to have some people who that's going to be a turn off to, especially if they're people who are history buffs who picked this game up because they're history buffs. And it's going to lead them to point out those historical inaccuracies where you're like, hey, who are you to tell me about maybe I can educate myself when you think that a musket can be reloaded in 6 seconds? And I think some of that could probably be adjusted a little bit. And then, of course, there's the little things like grammatical errors and that sort of thing that comes from an independently published book that probably doesn't have a professional editor and is designed to get it out there so people can play it. When I look at what I would call the evil, when I say the bad things about Colonies and Conquerors in its current form that I've seen, most of it comes down to things that will either be adjusted out later or will develop over time, I hope. And that is, even as easy as this game is to pick up and learn, as easy as it should be to play, it's going to turn off a lot of people who are of the, I don't want to learn how to play a new game crowd. I don't want to put that time in. There is a lack of several charts and tables. They got a lot of good charts and tables in here, but there are a lot of things that really need further explanation, that need more charts, more graphics, more quick reference things put in to understand, especially when you start talking about the tech skills and the inventor classes and stuff like that. When you're starting to talk about the crafting and developing of new technologies and stuff, there really needs to be a lot more stuff fleshed out and a lot better explanation in the tables that are there, and more tables for people to look at and read. The game seriously ramps up fast. I can't say that enough. It ramps up super, super fast, and that's going to be, it's a very, very defense-heavy game. You get very powerful very quickly, and everything is very heavily weighted towards defense. Even looking at just taking the sample fighter and looking at him, there's a 15% spread between his ability to hit himself. So that's a pretty significant spread in the way things work out, because you're talking about a guy who gets a +5 to his defensive rolls and only a +3 to his attack rolls with his basic starter equipment, and that's if he chooses that lower end basic starter equipment that's in that template. You could very easily have that same fighter be 5 or 6 point spread in his armor versus his attack, which literally means that now you have somebody who is 25% more difficult to hit. And that's a pretty significant gap when you remember the rule of 2 in D20 system, is that you give a +2 or a -2 for highly favorable and highly unfavorable circumstances that warrant a bonus. And you're talking about a 5-point spread. And then the game also lacks a lot of flavor in these books. When I say a lot of flavor, I mean, give me a Bible verse, give me a Quran verse. Well, you wouldn't have so much Quran because there's not a lot of Arabic flavor to this. But give me some Bible verses. Give me, with some of these holy spells, give me some comments, some Native American tribal wisdom and tribal sayings. Give me some ancient African proverbs with my witch doctor. Give me some comments from some generals about some of these formations and stuff. You want to educate me on history? Give me some history. Give me some real world history in the flavor. The other thing too is you got to flesh out the books really need to flesh out some details, and you see the same problem on two levels. And this is really my biggest complaint about this system as I've seen it so far. Not knowing what you know. And what I mean by that is you can tell that there are places in here where the developer knows certain things about tabletop role-playing games so well they didn't think to explain them out. And that is going to start on the low level of, why is there not some glossary of common role-playing terms? Or a short example of an exchange at a table telling me how a role-playing game works? The developer says in the first page, 1d6 plus 2. What the hell is a d6? What does 1d6 mean? Because there's nothing in here that tells me that 1d6 means one 6-sided die roll. Okay? There's a lot of assumption that the reader is going to be somebody who understands tabletop role-playing games. That description needs to be in there to give it that appeal to make it easier. And it can be so easily accomplished with a quick preface, a glossary of terms, and a written example. That spools into the second version of that same problem, which is there's a lot of skill descriptions, charts, tables, and other descriptions throughout particularly throughout the first book. I'm going to go ahead and say this. The Tall Tailor's Guide is way better written and put together than the Adventurer's Handbook. It just is. And I think that's probably because it was written second, and it was written from a perspective of a game master. In the Adventurer's Handbook, though, there are so many sections where you can tell it was a work in progress, and it got adjusted, and it got adjusted, and it got adjusted, and it got play tested, and the final version makes perfect sense to the developer and his playtest groups who have been there from version A, B, C, D, E, and F. But me, even as an experienced player, I have to read it 3-4 times, look for context and stuff to piece it together and then hope I got it right, because a lot of the learning process from versions A, B, C, and D are not in version E. And there's little pieces left out because by the time you got to writing that final version and putting it in the book, everybody who was playtesting it and the developer as well knew good and well what they were trying to talk about and how they had worked out the mechanic. But because they don't explain it, it leaves a lot wanting for the player. And these things, there's a kryptonite to it. Because that's the number one complaint you see about picking up independent games and new game systems for these players is they're lazy. And that lazy, entitled player mentality that we have in the world today of tabletop role-playing games, it's too hard to learn a new game. You give them the tiniest little thing that they can point at that makes it too hard to learn a new game, and they're not going to learn your game. And there's a lot of that is rife in this Adventurer's Handbook. So the good news is that when it comes to your evil side of things, your bad in this game, is most of it's stuff that can just be polished out. And anything else that can be perceived as a negative is really going to be a negative for certain players because it's just a matter of personal taste and personal opinion. But the bones of this game are very good. and it's definitely worth a look. There's going to be links below, and I'm going to do more videos on some of the more detailed pieces of it. But for right now, Colonies and Conquerors, definitely something to play. Definitely something to pick up. It's not very expensive. I think they sell it for like $20. It is 100% worth looking into, especially if you like that era, that colonial era. If you want to go through the French and Indian War, as we call it in America, which is the 7 Years' War for those Europeans out there, especially if you want to explore some of these other things, it's 100% worth a pickup. It is a very playable game that is reasonably well balanced, especially for a first go. It's actually better than Dungeons and Dragons in a lot of ways with the way some of the combat and stuff works. So you're getting a superior product there. And especially if you're big into high-powered games, it's perfect for you. If you want to ramp up fast and you want to become dual musket wielding superhero in the first several levels, I mean, it's a perfect game for you. But do keep in mind that it lacks a lot of polish, and you're going to have to fill in a lot of blanks if you're picking up this original version of these rules. And hopefully Spirit Bear Studios will go back and polish more. Maybe hire a professional editor would be a good idea. Go buy the version so that you can help them raise enough money to get a professional editor in there to kind of edit this book down so they can go back and add that flavor, so they can go back and add some more artwork, so they can go back and really polish things out a little bit more. And hopefully you'll have a really good alternative to Dungeons and Dragons here that is easy to pick up and play. So that's what I got. If you've played it, tell me about it in the comment section below. Love to hear what you got to say, and be looking for a few more videos on this. Remember, I get to 500 subs, I'm giving 5 people the Cyberpunk Red rulebook. I will also say that if you would prefer, I will instead get you the Colonies and Conquerors set. Just take a pick. But I'm looking forward to that, and I will see you guys next time.